أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس. ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. ربي أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك ربي أن يحضرون. أفحسبتم أنما خلقناكم عبثا وأنكم إلينا لا ترجعون. فتعالى الله الملك الحق لا إله إلا هو رب العرش الكريم. وما يدعو مع الله إلها آخر لا برهان له به فإنما حسابه عند ربه إنه لا يفلح الكافرون. وقل رب اغفر وارحم وأنت خير الراحمين. فسبحان الله حين تمسون وحين تصبحون وله الحمد في السماوات والأرض وعشيا وحين تظهرون. يخرج الحي من الميت ويخرج الميت من الحي ويحيي الأرض بعد موتها وكذلك تخرجون. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون. هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. سلام على نوح في العالمين إنا كذلك نجزي المحسنين إنه من عبادنا المؤمنين. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. اللهم إني أصبحت منك في نعمة وعافية وستر فأتمم نعمتك علي وعافيتك وسترك في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أصبحت منك في نعمة وعافية وستر فأتمم نعمتك علي وعافيتك وسترك في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أصبحت منك في نعمة وعافية وستر فأتمم نعمتك علي وعافيتك وسترك في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمدا عبدك ورسولك. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمدا عبدك ورسولك. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمدا عبدك ورسولك. اللهم إني أصبحت أشهدك وأشهد حملة عرشك وملائكتك وجميع خلقك أنك أنت الله لا إله إلا أنت وحدك لا شريك لك وأن سيدنا محمدا عبدك ورسولك. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيده. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيده. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيده. آمنت بالله العظيم وكفرت بالجبت والطاغوت واستمسكت بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله السميع العليم. آمنت بالله العظيم وكفرت بالجبت والطاغوت واستمسكت بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله السميع العليم. آمنت بالله العظيم وكفرت بالجبت والطاغوت واستمسكت بالعروة الوثقى لا انفصام لها والله السميع العليم. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم نبيا ورسولا. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم نبيا ورسولا. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم نبيا ورسولا. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. حسبي الله لا إله إلا هو عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. 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 اللهم إني أسألك من فجاءة الخير وأعوذ بك من فجاءة الشر. اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت خلقتني وأنا عبدك وأنا على عهدك ووعدك ما استطعت. أعوذ بك من شر ما صنعت. أبوء لك بنعمتك علي وأبوء بذنبي فاغفر لي فإنه لا يغفر الذنوب إلا أنت. اللهم أنت ربي لا إله إلا أنت عليك توكلت وأنت رب العرش العظيم. ما شاء الله كان وما لم يشأ لم يكن ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. أعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير وأن الله قد أحاط بكل شيء علما. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من شر نفسي ومن شر كل دابة أنت آخذ بناصيتها إن ربي على صراط مستقيم. يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك أستغيث ومن عذابك أستجير. أصلح لي شأني كله ولا تكلني إلى نفسي ولا إلى أحد من خلقك طرفة عين. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الهم والحزن وأعوذ بك من العجز والكسل وأعوذ بك من الجبن والبخل وأعوذ بك من غلبة الدين وقهر الرجال. اللهم إني أسألك العافية في الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم إني أسألك العفو والعافية والمعافاة الدائمة في ديني ودنياي وأهلي ومالي. اللهم استر عوراتي وأمن روعاتي. اللهم احفظني من بين يدي ومن خلفي وعن يميني وعن شمالي ومن فوقي وأعوذ بعظمتك أن أغتال من تحتي. اللهم أنت خلقتني وأنت تهديني وأنت تطعمني وأنت تسقيني وأنت تميتني وأنت تحييني وأنت على كل شيء قدير. أصبحنا على فطرة الإسلام وعلى كلمة الإخلاص وعلى دين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وعلى ملة أبينا إبراهيم حنيفا مسلما وما كان من المشركين. اللهم بك أصبحنا وبك أمسينا وبك نحيا وبك نموت وعليك نتوكل وإليك النشور. أصبحنا وأصبح الملك لله والحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم إني أسألك خير هذا اليوم فتحه ونصره ونوره وبركته وهداه. اللهم إني أسألك خير هذا اليوم وخير ما فيه وخير ما قبله وخير ما بعده وأعوذ بك من شر هذا اليوم وشر ما فيه وشر ما قبله وشر ما بعده. اللهم ما أصبح بي من نعمة أو بأحد من خلقك فمنك وحدك لا شريك لك فلك الحمد ولك الشكر على ذلك. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله العظيم وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله عدد ما خلق في السماء. سبحان الله عدد ما خلق في الأرض. سبحان الله عدد ما بين ذلك. سبحان الله عدد ما خلق. الحمد لله عدد ما خلق في السماء. الحمد لله عدد ما خلق في الأرض. الحمد لله عدد ما بين ذلك. الحمد لله عدد ما هو خالق. لا إله إلا الله عدد ما خلق في السماء. لا إله إلا الله عدد ما خلق في الأرض. لا إله إلا الله عدد ما بين ذلك. لا إله إلا الله عدد ما هو خالق. الله أكبر عدد ما خلق في السماء. الله أكبر عدد ما خلق في الأرض. الله أكبر عدد ما بين ذلك. الله أكبر عدد ما هو خالق. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما خلق في السماء. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما خلق في الأرض. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما بين ذلك. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم عدد ما هو خالق. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله عدد ما في علم الله. صلاة وسلاما دائمين بدوام ملك الله وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله عدد ما في علم الله. صلاة وسلاما دائمين بدوام ملك الله وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد مفتاح باب رحمة الله عدد ما في علم الله. صلاة وسلاما دائمين بدوام ملك الله وعلى آله وصحبه عدد كل ذرة ألف مرة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردنا الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض من أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في السور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم سلام قولا من رب رحيم سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم يرى الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون اللهم إنا نستحفظك ونستودعك أدياننا وأبداننا وأنفسنا وأهلنا وأولادنا وأموالنا وكل شيء أعطيتناه اللهم اجعلنا وإياهم في كنفك وأمانك وعياذك من كل شيطان مريد وجبار عنيد وذي بغي وذي حسد من شر كل ذي شر إنك على كل شيء قدير اللهم جملنا بالعافية والسلامة وحققنا بالتقوى والاستقامة وأعذنا من موجبات الندامة إنك سميع الدعاء اللهم اغفر لنا ولوالدينا وأولادنا ومشايخنا وإخواننا في الدين وأصحابنا ولمن أحبنا فيك ولمن أحسن إلينا والمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات يا رب العالمين صلى اللهم على عبدك ورسولك سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وارزقنا كمال المتابعة له ظاهرا وباطنا في عافية وسلامة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Be getting started in a second. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. We have a beautiful section here on seclusion. It's chapter 124 or hadith entry 124 on the importance of seclusion, giving the believer rest from bad company. Seclusion and moving away from people for a period of time has so many wisdoms you can't imagine. We create for ourselves mental habits. They're not just physical habits that we have, but we have mental habits. Our mental habits are oftentimes related to beliefs. And sometimes some people call these shadow beliefs. I like that phrase a lot. Shadow beliefs. There are our official beliefs. We know our official beliefs, but then there are shadow beliefs that are created in our interactions with people. And shadow belief is something that is merely created by peer pressure or the influence of certain individuals on our lives that is so pervasive and has been so consistent in the history of our lives that we don't even realize it's there. That could be a parent, which a parent, they have a lot of great influences. They might have some bad influences too. There are beliefs that we have that are not, beliefs are not just limited to aqeedah. There are what's important of the beliefs that we have in Deen, but there are also these beliefs about life, about ourselves, about things that are secondary. It's not aqidah, but it has a huge impact on our lives and how we live our lives. And these are what I really like the phrase shadow beliefs or secondary level beliefs. And some people call them paradigms. Okay, some people call them frameworks. It's all the secondary things about our lives. Maybe it's about the world, about you, about yourself, your abilities, your politics, about so many things that are secondary. You're not going to find it in an Aqidah textbook, but they are beliefs. They rest in our hearts as matters of doctrine, as things that are fixed, what we call in the Arabic word thawabit. Things that are thawabit that are not changing. And they influence how we live. They influence the decisions we make. And you don't even know they're there. That's why they're so huge. And it's almost like if you went and live in and no one in science told you there's something called gravity, you go on living your entire life never thinking about this reality that exists. That is gravity. If someone hadn't come up with it, gave it a word, right, and then taught you and then made you observe the most obvious fact that if you drop something, it falls to the center of the earth, you would never think of it, right? The idea of what's moving around what, the sun or the stars or the earth, you would never think of it. It's just there. So likewise, there are beliefs, secondary beliefs and primary beliefs. Set aside the primary beliefs, because that we could judge it by the book and the sunnah. It's all the secondary beliefs that we also have to take advantage, to be aware of. And I'm telling you, unless you're told this, you don't even think these things exist, especially that which is brought to you by your parents. Because Quran tells us your parents are sacred. Yeah, the rights of your parents are sacred. Not everything that your parent teaches you is true. Well, we hope we're not here undermining parents, by the way. For some people whose kids are listening to this, this is not a rebellion thing. We're talking to the adults. We're not talking to the kids here. The kids, you first of all, why would you listen to me when you have your parents? When I'm talking to you about, if there's one of two to think about, right, or to listen to, some person, a recording on the internet, or the person who's been feeding you your whole life. So this discussion is not for the kids. If you're still like under the 18 and you're still living on under your parents' roof, this isn't for you. You can listen to this again when you're 30 or when you're 25. But for the 25-year-olds out there who they're now starting to discover life, well, one of the most important things is that what a person believes in life, of these secondary beliefs, and these secondary beliefs could be Islam related or not. They're just not necessarily direct aqidah matters, but they do influence your life completely. You have to realize that even your mother and father are human beings. They transmitted things to you. They transmitted wonderful things to you. You owe it to yourself to critically analyze the things that are their judgment calls and that they've inherited from their forefathers. Because it's so important that we don't, in the same vein, as important it is that we don't take on, we don't reject the link between parents, generations. We have to have a link between generations. Otherwise, you go crazy. If you have no link and there's just, you cut yourself off from your parents, you'll go crazy, because you also lose the barakah from Allah. He doesn't accept it. Simple as that. That's how simple it is. Allah Ta'ala does not accept a person who breaks that link. You break that link with your parents, you've broken it with Allah. That we're talking about in love and respect and honor. However, no sound and right-minded parent will also close your mind and say, even as an adult, I want you to close your mind and accept everything I gave you. They may have given you things good for them in their generation. It may be the norm in that time. in that place. And forget parents. Let's not even go there because, as we said in Surah Luqman and others, the parent is a sacred relationship. So let's not even go there so it doesn't appear that we're attacking that. The society at large, all the media that we're receiving, all of these things, we're getting messages. They're creating a framework for you. Your school, your university. There are certain things that are in agreement with all schools and universities. No matter which one you set your foot in, you're going to get that. There's the major media companies. They're really only like 3 or 4, 6 or 7 people or organizations own all of these media companies. Even local news, the local news stations, their businesses, they tend to be owned by like a few conglomerates. So random station in Kansas City that gives you the news at 7 a.m, and a random radio station in Ohio that gives people the news and the traffic report. It's owned by the same company. We're receiving information, ways of viewing the world. We constantly receive it from others. And what a shame that if we don't ever examine and realize that we're being fed. Now, just because you're being fed doesn't mean it's always evil. Doesn't mean everyone has an agenda, right? But you owe it to yourself to think about what you're receiving, the information you're receiving, and if the way of your viewing the world is something that you truly believe in or not, right? We're just cattle. The Prophet ﷺ said, "La takun imma'a." Don't be like a camel that's just walking with the rest of the herd. And what's the method of examining this? It must be that you pull out of that system. How do you pull out of that system? Where can you go? It used to be you could physically get away. You can't physically get away anymore. The world's all connected by the internet. Go wherever you want to go. You're going to be connected. But the way that we have is through seclusion. The importance of hayat dunya is an example of this. This is throughout the ages, from the time of the first generation of human beings until now. This hayat dunya is something that is become paramount in the minds of all men until you pull yourself away, as the Prophet ﷺ did. When the Prophet ﷺ couldn't leave, there was no such thing as leaving in Arabia. You leave, you go on your own in the desert, you're going to suffer. And back in the old days, there wasn't this thing where you just move somewhere else. You move somewhere else where? Where are you going to go in the meantime? There are no hotels. There's no such thing as going rent an apartment somewhere. If you went to another city, you needed a host to help you live there. Okay? To be a mediator between you and the people of that town. Even until these, as far back as like 1920, 1930, 1960, in the old city of Fez, you couldn't just go buy a house. People needed to know you. Nobody would sell their house to a stranger, right? The homes are all occupied, right? The only way to live there is someone rents to you or sells to you. No one's going to do that if you're a stranger, because that's going to upset the neighbors. They cared so much about the fabric of their society that they didn't just sell you a house. They made sure that you're a known entity, because that's abuse of the neighbor. Sell the house to an absolute stranger like that. So you couldn't just do that. So the Prophet ﷺ would go into the mountain of Hira. And the Prophet ﷺ, one of his miracles is that he brought a whole new way of viewing the world without ever having traveled the world. So where did he get those ideas? It must have been external. It wasn't something that he got from other human beings, because he lived right there with the people. When he went to Syria, he went in the way that everyone saw him, doing trade. And when he went to Yemen, everyone was with him and they saw him doing trade. Allahu alam if the Prophet had even went to Yemen. We know that he went to Sham for trade. But he went to trade and came back. He didn't go and spend 2 years and visit different monks and learn new things. No, he did trade and he came back. So how did he break from the vision and the views and the way of seeing the world of Quraysh? Well, he began to break from that by going to the mountain. But where did he get the new ideas from? These radical ideas of how to completely transform our view and the Arabs' view of existence, of the whole universe. That had to be something from the external, that came to him externally. So in this process of seclusion, it is up to us to withdraw ourselves every once in a while. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does the rest, inspires us with what benefits us. Right? Unlike, of course, the Prophet ﷺ was given the book. We measure our inspirations against that book and against, of course, his sunnah. So that inspirations that people get when they're when they step away from their society, when they step away from their norms, are not inspirations from Iblis or from the nafs, or there may be good inspirations that we misinterpret. Just as I can open the Quran, recite it, and misinterpret it. I can open up Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim and read it and misinterpret it. So you can have inspirations at the same time in the same way. Yes, you got inspired, but you misinterpreted the inspiration. Why do we misinterpret? Either because we don't understand, we have ignorance, or we have sins that cloud up our heart, and therefore even the good inspiration that we receive, we misconstrue it. They give the examples of this. So sometimes a person does a lot of ibadah and they do very well, and they see a wonderful dream, but that dream has in it a little bit of an admixture of good and bad, and some meaninglessness mixed in with some truth, or even tadakhulat min ash-shaytan. So this idea of separating yourself for periods of time until an inspiration comes into your heart is a sensitive one. It requires a lot of knowledge. And what it requires you, okay, where do I get that knowledge? No, it's the opposite. If you get an inspiration, you must measure it. You must measure it against the book and the sunnah. Okay, because that's the one paradigm and the one framework that is always right. And that's what it means to be Muslim, that you believe that the Quran and the sunnah is always right in every century, in every era. Right? So this concept of separating ourselves every once in a while, and by the way, today we're going to go a little short because we've been going so long after Fajr that it's throwing some people's off because they have work, etc. So I don't want to do that to people anymore. But this idea that you separate yourself every once in a while and examine the way of living that you're given, the ideas that you're given. This COVID-19 situation, honestly, I don't see it as a crisis. I see it as a humongous, amazing blessing. It's forced people, especially in the wintertime when there was nowhere to go. It's forced people to stay, really, they cut off their normal framework of everyday living, the habits that they have. It's cut off. Once it cut off, you have this huge gap of empty time, of free time. So you don't get in the car anymore and listen to the same radio station. They pump the same message to you. The same idea that you just have to buy a nice house and you have to get a nice car and you got to live this life and you have to do that, this, that, and the other, and you get the same message. Or you get the same distraction. I mean, sports had almost become irrelevant during this time. Nobody really wanted to watch these games that had nobody in the stadiums. It's really hard to watch these things. So that went out the window. Seclusion is not an official, it doesn't have to be some official thing where, all right, folks, I'm gone, goodbye, I'm going off to a cave or something like that. I'll see you all in 2 months. That's not necessarily the only way it's done. It's more done in our day and age when just the norms, certain norms are taken away from us. The norm of the exposure of the radio that we were listening to in the car, the workplace discussions, maybe certain colleagues, the environment of the workplace was gone. Most people did their work from home. So that type of hyper-competitive environment that reinforced Your purpose of your life is to go out and finally get that 7-figure salary, and then buy that, this, that, and the other, and live like this and get this promotion. All of a sudden, wait a second, if I'm not seeing the same colleagues every day, I don't really care as much, because there's no competition anymore. Who am I going? I'm not competing against a screen name. A screen name, that's what your colleagues have become, a screen name during this COVID situation. And before that, you saw them in the flesh. You ate lunch with them. There's competition, right? He said, and what they call talking shop, right? It means like, he did this and he's working on this project. And if you're their lawyers, oh, he took this case and he defeated so-and-so, and you're part of that. So it becomes a shadow belief, a secondary belief that you take onto yourself, that you're going to be happy one day when they talk about you in that way. And they say, he did this, that, and that. These things are not necessarily haram, but you just have to assess, is that what you truly believe? Is that what you truly want in life? You'll never know until you're ripped away from it and all those influences are gone. And you're sitting all alone. You got a computer and the computer turns off and you're all alone. You ask yourself, what actually do I want in life? What is my purpose? So all that influence of social competition is gone. You actually get to have some peace and quiet, and actually in the first few months, nothing changes. It takes depth of this. It takes 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 months of the silence. Especially for us here on the East Coast, we have winter, and that really forces us inside, to forces internal. As we stay inside in our homes, we're not going outside, we don't get any sun. You really are forced internally, and it's almost uncomfortable sometimes. It's uncomfortable because we've never been there before. It's uncomfortable, this idea that we're completely stripped of all this human interaction, because they were providing our framework for us. Now we have to provide it ourselves. We have to provide these secondary beliefs ourselves. And you'll be able to start questioning. So you question things that you considered so untouchable, in the same way that the sky is blue and that the ground is, the trees are there and the mountains are there. Those things are untouchable. You can't change that. Likewise, there are things in our lives that take the position of mountains and trees and skies, such as you might be in medical school and realize, all this time, I'm just here because my mom wanted me to come here. I don't really like medicine. You might question that. You might question the friend circles that you have. You might question my trajectory in life. All these things, these are the secondary things that seclusion offers. It offers us, allows us to question these secondary things. Now, where are these important in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Seclusion in the sight of Allah ta'ala truly is important insofar as we have elevated matters of this hayat dunya so high that they're competition with Allah. That's the point of seclusion, is to isolate that competition. And Allah does not want a competitor, even for believers. We say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. We say guide us to the straight path, not the path of those who are astray and those who are misguided. But that doesn't necessarily mean we've internalized it. And not internalizing it doesn't mean you're a kafir or a munafiq. It just means we're incomplete. Just like the sun in this image, it hasn't risen fully. Most of our iman is like that. For sure, it's risen, or it's broken the plane of the horizon, so that's iman. But is it fully risen? Is it shining, leaving no shadows at all? No, most of us aren't like that. And so when we talk about these shadow beliefs, these secondary beliefs, we're talking about things that are affecting us in elevating the dunya over our the akhirah. That's how simple it is. So when you're in seclusion, you may question a lot of things, and that's all fine and good if that's what benefits a person's life. But we have to know what kind of questioning is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prioritizes for us. And that's the questioning of how much are we doing for this worldly life versus the next one. That's what Allah cares about. And He may care for your own benefit that you question other things that are related to this life. So that's why when you're in a seclusion, you're going to get inspirations. But if you come out of your seclusion merely rearranging your dunya, you may have benefited, but that benefit is so short term. All you did is rearrange this hayat dunya. All right, it's not bad. Maybe good for your life. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He wants us to see and rearrange the ratio of importance between dunya and akhirah. That's the difference. So that's the hadh of Allah in our seclusion. The hadh means the portion. So if you rearrange your hayat dunya, wonderful, that's really good for you. That's all for you. But what is for Allah is to rearrange your priorities that involve sins versus righteous actions, that involve love of dunya versus love of akhirah, that involve work for this life versus work for the next life. So there's the hadh for yourself, the portion. Hadh here meaning portion for yourself and a portion for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the difference you can have both, and that's the best. You have the best of both worlds. So I realized that I don't know why, but I've been doing this sinful behavior and I'm going to stop it. I have no interest in it anymore. And at the same time, you realize something of your world, something of your hayat dunya. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whenever a person comes near to Him, He draws near to them, which means I'm going to focus on dunya and akhirah and sins versus good deeds. You should expect Allah Ta'ala will send you something that's good for your life. And that's why most people, when they have a separation and a seclusion, they end up having both a spiritual and worldly reformation within themselves. Both. The spiritual is from you and the worldly is from Allah. He'll fix your dunya. He'll improve your hayat dunya. COVID-19 provided this for the whole world opportunity, but it does happen outside of COVID-19 too, but it happens a lot more rarely. And that is, for example, the loss of a loved one, a divorce, a move, a job forced you to move, a school forced you to move, anything that separates you from the normal habits of life. Anytime that separation happens, you find yourself filled with free time. It's not free time, it's more like loneliness. It's like, I don't want to be alone. I don't want to have free time. Free time is more like free time to do what I enjoy. So that's not the right word. When you lose a loved one and all of a sudden you're alone, happens to many women, their husband die. Usually the husband dies before the wife. And the kids are out and about, and all of a sudden it's just her and her two cats or her two dogs or whatever. And they transform their lives because now there's this emptiness. And what do you do with that emptiness? That's the question. If a person turns to Allah Ta'ala in that time of emptiness, then they should expect something great. Not good, great. Because you don't take a step to Allah except He takes 10 steps towards you. You don't walk to Allah except that He comes running towards you. So both will transform. It's a beautiful thing. And it usually is preceded by a very, very dark time of emptiness and loneliness. Extremely lonely. And a lot of people went through that during the COVID time. And whenever there's a death that happens to people, whenever they move, if they move from a big city to a small city or vice versa, it doesn't matter. They move from where they know everybody to where they don't know anybody. This happens a lot of times to kids when they go to college. For the first time, they're away from their home. They're away from their parents. They're away from the familiar. And by the way, I have my own opinions about that these days, because the shar is so blatant out there that, this idea of just, I'm going to go to another state for college may be a bit different these days than in the past. But for the sake of the conversation, people go out, they spend time, they go out and they're freshmen, and it's amazing for the first period of time, but then all of a sudden, they're really lonely. What do? They start questioning. And nobody will sit there questioning the way they live or their paradigm or their framework. You're not going to question it right away. It's going to take months to undo mentally the construction that's in your brain. So in the beginning of COVID, for example, we all just try to replicate everything that we knew. And then we succeeded sometimes and discovered new things. But then as the year progresses and moved on, there was a little bit less of that. And there was this thought of, why don't we rearrange it? Why are things the way they are? Why couldn't they be different? And people rearrange their brains and their priorities. When I say their brains, I mean their priorities. And that's what happens when kids go off to college. Oh, the beginning, it's so fun, it's amazing, and make new friends and go this, and then you hit another phase, and you hit another period where the newness of this situation is not on your mind anymore. It's not new anymore. It's become a norm. And the norm is that you're alone. And that's when you start marinating. The thought starts marinating. I'm telling you, in the toolbox of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of the best tools, one of his favorite tools, is seclusion. And we're talking about the natural seclusion, not the artificial. Artificial seclusion is, I'm living life, I'm happy, everything's fine. And I read this book, Seclusion, so I start to go alone for 30 minutes a day. That, I would say, is more of an artificial seclusion. The natural one, the life-altering ones, it sort of happens. You can't always control it. You can't always do that. You can try and artificially separate yourself every once in a while so that you can keep your mind fresh. But the problem with that is that you're in complete control of that. And if you need to shut that off, you can shut that off. But when it happens naturally, such as a move, a death, a situation like what we had here with the lockdown, which is obviously very rare, but it's usually a move or a death. You moved away and went somewhere, you got this thing, I'll study abroad for a year. All right, it's great for the first 2-3 months. As you get into month 8 and 9 and 10, your whole mind is now rearranged because you've had so much time. There's no going back. There's a death, no going back. Whereas if I artificially say, hey, from now on, I'm going to go spend from, 30 minutes a day, 50 minutes a day by myself to really think about life and existence, you can shut that off whenever you want. You're in complete control of it. So it's not natural. It's not strong. It's there, but it's not strong. The strong one is that which you're not in control of. And many people, I believe that everyone at some point in life has experienced something like this, where life has done that to you. And most people, it only happens once or twice or 3 times. And you realize, I've been living this way. Why did I believe that? This is the only way I can live. I don't know. I just never thought about it. That's exactly the reason. Because we're so busy in this sort of some rat race of life, you just don't even think about it. This is how life is, and that's it. No thought to that it could be different. But this is where seclusion is such an amazing thing that Allah created for us. Most people, they really only enter into seclusion after some crisis. But it doesn't have to be like that. The artificial seclusion that you create for yourself does have a great value, and it could at least get you somewhere. He says, Ibn al-Mubarak relates that Omar said, take your share of seclusion. How admirable is the statement of Junaid, may Allah benefit us through his barakah. The endurance of seclusion is easier than forced politeness with company. Al-Khattabi said, there will be great good in seclusion, even were it to bring nothing more than safety from backbiting and from seeing evils which one cannot remove. Prophet ﷺ said, there shall come upon the people a time when a Muslim's best wealth will be some sheep with which he follows the mountain gorges and the places of rain, fleeing with his religion from trials. Al-Khattabi records that seclusion and socializing vary depending on their entailments. The proof texts which have come down urging people to come together are to be interpreted as applying the gatherings for the sake of obedience to Allah, the imams, and religious matters, and vice versa. As for the physical company and separation, it is preferable for whoever knows how to be self-sufficient in his livelihood and in preserving his religion to retreat from the company of other people on the condition that he attend the prayer and congregation, greet Muslims with the salam, and uphold the rights of other Muslims in such matters as visiting the sick and attending the funerals. What is required is to renounce superfluous association with others, since that leads to preoccupation of the mind and wastes time that could be spent on more important things. So you now start living because the people this, the people that. What if the people say this? What if the people say that? This is the worst way to live. You're just a herd now. You're just like the sheep, because you just see the people every single day, and you've just taken it as a shadow belief. It's become a belief in your mind that their approval is necessary and their norms are sacred. See, that's what I'm talking about. Because you're exposed to them so much, without realizing it becomes a belief in your head. And you take it as sacred, that you have to live like this. You need their approval. Now, we do need the people's approval in some things that the deen tells us, such as the moral norms and customs of the pious Muslims. That their approval is a sign of Allah's approval. Their approval in what? In morals and deen. Meeting with others should be treated like needs for lunch and dinner, so that one limits oneself to what is necessary. This will bring more peace to the body and to the heart. Imam al-Qushayri says in his Risala, the way of the man who chooses seclusion is that he should view the people as being thereby secured from his own evil, so that I'm securing others too. I might be an undue influence, maybe positive or negative, maybe negative, right, on others. So I'm protecting them too. And he says, and don't view it as the other way around. Don't view it as, oh, I'm protecting myself from them, because that entails blame. That entails looking down on the Jama'ah of Muslims. So the first priority is, why don't you look at it the opposite? Blame yourself. Maybe I'm not a good influence on them. The former attitude leads to belittling yourself, your nafs, which is the trait of the humble. Not yourself, but your nafs. Because we honor and respect ourselves as human beings. Sayyidina Ali, for example, said, never embarrass yourself, right? Never blame, never sort of humiliate yourself in front of people. But we also have a nafs, and the nafs is best when it's contradicted. The nafs is best when it is not treated as not indulged and not made innocent. In the nafs la'ammaratun bisu, don't always make yourself innocent. The nafs is best when it's blamed and not and suspected and not trusted, the ego. Yeah. However, if someone views that they're protecting themselves from the people, that impels one to view oneself as superior to them and that they are worse than them. And hence this breeds arrogance. Right? So this was a really important topic, and let's turn it over now to the Q&A. Only speaking about 5 minutes on this because I wanted to keep it a little bit more brief than usual for the sake of people. It is a Tuesday. Some people are working. Not everyone has the Imam schedule, which is our schedule, which is just based around the Dini calendar, the Hijri calendar and the religious events. So we have to be cognizant of that. It used to be that was the calendar of schools and work. It was based around the Hijri calendar and the sacred times of year. But we're not living in that world anymore. Unfortunately, it could change, but we're right now have to cater to 2 different calendars. So we have some salams and good mornings to everyone. So walaikum salam to everybody. Alima 52 says beliefs, though, and emotional consequences is what we in CBT therapy work with. Changing cognition to change behavior with change belief, which changes beliefs. Thank you for talking about this concept. People are not aware. It's so true. It's so true. Insofar as this is what therapy, now I don't know what CBT means, but maybe it's cognitive behavioral therapy, I'm guessing. That it's one of the most important things, because I'm telling you, when they talk about beliefs, they're not talking about aqidah here. They're talking about frameworks, ways of seeing the world that are secondary, right? And insofar as that's the case, everyone has the right. It's really your if we want to say a human right, it's your right to know that that everyone's influencing you. That's not necessarily always bad, but you have the right to know that you're being influenced at all times. You're being influenced. And that's why even in social media apps, when they do this, they have these shows and documentaries, and they're telling you essentially, right, that these apps are influencing you. They're influencing you by showing you the advertisements that you're talking about, or by not showing you certain news stories that they know you're not going to click on. So they're in control of what shows up on your feed. And that's not necessarily evil, but you have the right to know. You have to know, you must know that this is happening. In the same way, you must know that the major news networks are owned by like 6 different corporations that are run by like, probably 20 big shot personalities. You have the right to know that. It's not saying that what's evil and what's not, because everything's mixed. But you do have the right to know that. You have the right to know that human beings, they're influenced by their family. Its influence is so deep, you don't even realize it until you separate yourself and you get a chance to think on your own for once. And maybe someone challenges that belief and you get upset, but you can't justify why you're upset. That's oftentimes the reason that people get upset. It's because, oh shoot, I just realized that something that I hold as a belief has no basis, or I don't know the basis. He came and questioned it. I don't know the basis. It's just custom. I took it on because my dad repeated it, or my mom repeated it, or my whole community repeated it. But I really can't explain to you why I believe this. That's a problem. It's definitely why if it's a matter of religion, we definitely have to address that. You have to know why you believe in Allah, why you believe in Quran and things like that. And that's the value of what we call kalam, ilm al-kalam. That's why they created ilm al-kalam, right? Or the rational basis for why I believe what I believe. And they said, well, it's not really good to teach that to people unless they need it. Well, yeah, but in this world, you have to teach it. In this world, you will be questioned. Now, again, we said there are the primary beliefs and there are these secondary beliefs. The secondary belief that you have to be a doctor. that you have to be a lawyer, you have to be a professional, you have to do this, right? Who said that, right? Give me a reason to believe that. I'm not just programmed to just, we heard something 5,000 times, halas, you accepted it? No, we're not sheeple here. Sheeple, like sheep and people who are sheep. Nazli says, or actually first there's AA, are we allowed to tell white lies? Many ask questions you don't want to answer. Tawriya doesn't always work. Yes, you are allowed to, you're not obligated to answer everyone, but if, and it would be in a situation where you have to, they're asking you and you don't want to talk, you are allowed to say, try to make it tawriya as much as possible. Tawriya is to say words that mean one thing to you and one thing to everyone else. That you know that they will misunderstand it, but it's actually a true statement, right? It's a true statement, or it's half the truth, and you know that they're going to understand it one way, but you meant it another way. So technically, by like the letter of the law, you didn't lie, but you also didn't tell them what the truth. The Prophet ﷺ, I think it was saying Abu Bakr Siddiq had to do this when they asked him, who is this man? And they were making the hijrah. And Abu Bakr said, he's my guide. And the man understood guide in the desert. And Abu Bakr intended my guide to Allah in deen. So that's called tawriya. But if you can't, then yes, you don't have to say what you don't want to say to people. And you can tell some little white lies because it's not people's business when they're prying. Let's say your uncle comes in and pries into your business. It's not his right. So now Sister Nazi says, what are your thoughts on going far away to college versus closer, 3 to 4 hours from home base? How does that affect college students if the base was strong? Well, we do have rules in terms of the mahram rules. We do have mahram rules, as many people find it to be strange, but we do have, because of the modern, independence that people are assuming. But we do have some hadiths on the Prophet ﷺ saying that the woman should not travel by herself for more than a day. In other fiqh, it's traveling distance without a mahram. And so that is the position of the 4 schools. And that if the person is going to live somewhere far away, if a woman is going to live far away, there should be a mahram there. So she should have an uncle in that town or something that can be someone that she leans on when needed. I say, well, I don't want to lean on anyone. Okay, you do your own thing. We have a religion, right? But so, and that Prophet ﷺ talked about that in terms of for women, that there has to be a mahram, which is the male relative somewhere in that town. So for example, the Dar es Salaam in Chicago, that's their rule. A woman can come and live in the dorm there, but she has to have a mahram in the greater Chicago area. What happens if something happens? There needs to be a male figure in their life to protect their rights if someone's bothering them or if something happens, right? So I know that the modern sentiment is very different from that, but where is that modern sentiment got us? It hasn't, right? I think the Me Too movement is one of the worst things that's happened to women, that they're in the workforce being abused like this and taken advantage of. Nonetheless, with Me Too or without Me Too, the rule is the rule. So that's one thing we have to keep in mind, because we have to respect that law. Maybe do the Shafi'is have something about they separate between the residence and the travel? Allahu alam. You have to ask the Shafi'iyah. And also for boys, I think from what I've seen, the college people got off to college and they have no anchor anymore. Sometimes there's harms to them too, in terms of just keeping discipline and it seems to me that these college environments are terrible intellectually and socially. Intellectually, the ideas that are pumped out in these colleges are terrible. The liberal arts divisions of these departments, I should say, of these universities, the stuff that they're teaching is, it's a completely different worldview, right? It's a completely different worldview. Then you go to sciences, well, I think it's a lot better, right? So, I mean, the sciences are probably, they're less about value judgments about life. So, tech and bio and stuff, there's probably less things that are contrary to Tawheed there and to Islam there. So from what I've seen, the most stable guys, forget the separating men and women, the most stable guys are the guys who they kept some kind of anchor in their college days so that they didn't actually go too far. Now, you got people living in Indiana and Ohio, they might have colleges, they may not have a choice. So we have to keep that in mind too. AA is, or Aisha saying, might be depression or loneliness, if I am understanding correctly. They're both usually tied together. It's oftentimes tied together. AA says seclusion is better than forced politeness with people. What does that mean? It means that to be alone is better than having to be two-faced, which means I hate being here. I don't want to be here. So I'm just going to smile with my teeth, even though the smile is not in my eyes and anywhere else in my face. It's a completely fake smile. And all this fakery, it's being a little bit two-faced. It's better to be alone and not have gone at all than to be two-faced like that. And in your mind, you're saying, could you please leave me alone? And I can't wait to get out of here. But on your face, you're smiling and you're asking, how's everyone doing? So you breeds hypocrisy. Nafis Hamid says, I understand I should focus on myself, but it's also frustrating that even if you talk about these beliefs with your friends and family, it seems to have no effect on them. I think people are stuck. They're programmed, as Kenza says. People are programmed to see the world in a way. Why? Because everyone else does it. That's the problem. That is a problem. Right? People are programmed. I can't tell you how many people I've seen, their entire worldview is dominated by the majority. Well, that's what everyone does. Well, everyone does. And the word everyone is like dalil for them. It's like religious evidence. Dalil. Everyone. So they're programmed to be like everyone else. Kenza talks about the power of dhikr's repetition and engraving it into the mind, to the point that Allah Ta'ala, we behave according to what Allah wants, not what the people want. One of the signs of strength is that the promise of Allah is greater in your mind than what's happening in the world. That's the sign of Iman. That no matter what you tell me, the whole world goes one way and Allah is promising me benefit the opposite way, that the promise of Allah outweighs all of the agreement of people. Fatima says, what is the balance for the layman relegated to worshiping at home in seclusion due to the pandemic? Noticing more waswas. All right, Fatima brings up a very good point. Seclusion is not good for everybody. It can drive certain people crazy. Some people need to be with people, but which people? That becomes the question. This is a great point that she brings up, and I should have brought it up. Seclusion is not right for everybody. It will ruin some people. It will make shaitan have a field day with them. It's best for those people to be around regular Muslims who pray and fast. They need to be around people to learn social norms and to keep them mentally stable. And everyone knows themselves, right? Everyone is, as they say, every person is their own real doctor. And we have to think about To what degree is this seclusion helping us, or is it driving us crazy? And how do we judge that? We must have an anchor in the masajid, because the people of the masajid become our anchor. They will, if they deem us to be normal and sane and upright, that's a good sign. They become our mirror, especially in terms of, for the men, the people who pray Fajr and Isha at the masjid. They are an anchor, they are a mirror. You can't underestimate these people. These are the true awliya Allah, the people who pray every Fajr in the masjid. Those are the local salihin and awliya. Those people, their opinion of you when it comes to general behavior and religion and normalcy is so important. Right? How does that work for the women? That's a good question. I don't know, because they're not instructed to pray Fajr and Isha in the masjid. So what are they? Who do they mirror off of? I guess within their family. Allahu A'lam. That's a good question, and I probably should ask that question. I'll ask some scholars that question and see what they say. But Fatima brings up that very important point, that seclusion is not good for everybody. And this pandemic has created a lot of waswas because people they didn't know what to turn to. Like I said, they're programmed on obeying the masses, following the masses, just whatever everyone else is doing. And that became their source of rootedness and anchoredness. And once that was taken away, all the distraction was taken away, they're empty. There was emptiness there. And that's from the benefits of Iman, is that it could take all the people away, but at least I do know that Allah is there, angels are there. I understand how tests work and hardships. Kenza says, I had a brutal awakening regarding humanities and liberal arts. It was so disappointing. The agenda is real. It is such a, these universities are not like the old universities where you go, you study language, you learn a couple things that are nice. It's not like that. These universities now are institutions. They're brainwashed. They're I'm gonna say brainwashing. They're telling you their beliefs. They're religious institutions in a sense, but the religion is this humanism. It's religion. It's a religion of humanism. I won't even say it's brainwashing. It's a religion. They have their beliefs in the same way that we have our beliefs. You go to a Dar al-Ulum, you go to Jamia of a Islamic college. We're going to tell you La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. You're going to tell me something else, you get kicked out. They're the same way, these liberal arts universities now. The liberal arts are not open for all beliefs anymore. They are not. They have their beliefs. Why should we go to those places to learn from them? Well, if we're going to go, we better be very selective about what we study. We better study something that is okay for us to study. Don't take any of these, any class that involves any value judgment of what life is about and what existence is about. Look at the professor. Who is going to tell you about how to live and what existence is about and how to use how to, understand what's right and wrong about life? I don't want to hear from you. I don't even know you. Right? No, I'm going to hear from someone who's got the foundation right, which is La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. If you don't have that foundation, I'm not interested. They will tell you the same thing. If you don't have the foundation that the human being is ultimately the final judge and arbiter of right and wrong, right, then they don't want to see that on the paper. Put down in any one of these classes, well, the arbiter of right and wrong is Allah. It's rejected. If you say, I have chosen my arbiter to be Allah, maybe they'll allow it, because you're centered around yourself. You centered it around yourself. But if you make the statement that right and wrong, truth and falsehood is determined by Allah and His Messenger and the book that He has revealed, you'll be laughed out of the classroom and you'll get an F. And that's the foundation. Can't even bring up that foundation. So That's why take everything, be very cautious about the humanities classes that you take. That's why Zaytuna, they're trying to do a liberal arts college with the foundation of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And there are some really good people there. There are some people that I'm not big fans of, right? That are still a little attached to the perennial philosophy. Usually like around the edges of Zaytuna, maybe not in Zaytuna, but there are some really great people there, right? Who have their heads on right. And I'm glad that that institution exists. And I pray that Allah fills it with more grounded Muslim scholars. Last one here. Shima says finding good female friends can be really difficult. Unfortunately, it's very true. I'll tell you the best place to get it is in classes, the local classes. That's the best place to find friends because they're going to know you're going to share the same core beliefs. She says it's hard. It can be hard to gauge who to take advice from and who is just speaking for the sake of speaking their mind. I'm telling you the best. Firstly, you can find sincere people anywhere, but in general, the classes are the best place to find friends. At the very least, the religious Muslim will not backbite you, and if they do backbite you, they'll know they did something wrong. I can't imagine having a friend that backbites. All right, folks. Jazakumullahu khairan. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. باب الرجاء الناس قد رقت وبت أشكو إلى مولاي ما أجد طرقت باب الرجاء والناس قد رقدوا وبت أشكو إلى مولاي ما أجد وقلت يا أملي في كل نائبة ومن عليه لكاشف الضر أعتمد أشكو إليك أمورا أنت تعرفها ملي على حملها صبر ولا جلد أشكو إليك أمورا أنت تعرفها ملي على حملها صبر ولا جلد وقد مددت يدي بالذل واقفة يا خير من مدت إلي